The following is a WRHU special program. If you want talk, games, and fun all rolled into one, well, you've come to the right place. This is The Game Show, where host Bradley Clarke and his special guests talk about the world of television game and competition shows. But Bradley's guests aren't here to just talk. They came to play a game as well. What will today's topic be? What game does Bradley have planned? There's only one way to find out.
It's time to start the show.
You heard the man. Welcome to The Game Show. And here's your host, the Bradster himself, Bradley Clarke.
Thank you so much, Austin Angelo, and welcome to The Game Show, the talk show that talks about the world of game and competition shows. And this is a very special episode of The Game Show because it is 1 hour long. That's right. We are doubling the time to 1 hour because we got a lot to cover on today's topic of discussion. It's our final game show episode of Survivor Game Changers.
This is Survivor Game Changers. 39 days, 20 people, 1 survivor.
And after 2 episodes of the game show devoted to Survivor Game Changers, we are going to talk about the finale of this season of Survivor. And joining me on the line to talk about the finale, you may recognize his voice because he was here on our previous episode of the game show. This is Survivor superfan Bernie Dennler. Hey, Bernie.
Hey, Bradley. Super excited to talk about the Game Changers finale today with you.
I am too. Now, just before we get into that conversation, I just want to say congratulations. You are now a graduate of Hofstra University.
Yes, I am. I'm out, but I'm still calling in because there's lots of Survivor knowledge that we need to talk about, especially with such a crazy finale like this.
That's right. You're still a Survivor superfan, whether you were a graduate or not. Is that right?
Yes, Survivor has been a part of my life since way back in Borneo. I've been a Survivor superfan basically for as far back as I can remember. And I hope that Survivor will stick around through this part of my life. As long as it's on the air, I'll be watching.
The same can be said for me. All right, let's get into it. We have a winner for Survivor Game Changers, and her name is Sarah Lacina.
The winner of Survivor Game Changers, Sarah.
Interesting outcome, but nevertheless, we do have a winner, Sarah Lacina, originally from Survivor Cagayan back in season 28. She is the sole survivor of season 34.
Yeah, absolutely. Not the person who I would have gone into this season expecting to win. And apparently neither did Jeff Probst. He thought that Sarah was going to be overwhelmed by the talent pool this season. But from the looks of it, it seemed like Sarah did a pretty good job of overwhelming some of her own competition.
That's right. And speaking of talent pool, let's start with that. Because when we went into this season, we didn't actually think the talent pool was that high, would you say?
I thought the pool was a little bit higher than I think that you did because I think that there were a lot of really strong players. I guess it's kind of a glass half full, glass half empty kind of situation. If you look at it in terms of, people like Sierra Dawn Thomas and Haley and Troyzan, and honestly, at the time, even people like Sarah, who I didn't really think had a shot of winning and who I didn't think really belonged in a season called Game Changers, because my initial reaction was sort of like, what did she do? Why is she a game changer? So in that regard, yeah, I think the talent pool was kind of lacking. But at the same time, you had people like Sandra, who won twice. You had Tony, you had JT, you had Malcolm. You even had some of those lower tier but still pretty powerful players like Sierra, who ended up going home first, but who I thought would be a formidable opponent in this season. And it shook out much differently than I expected it was going to. It kind of went more how I feared and less how I thought it would.
Well, it certainly went how I feared. We were talking before this season started, if we had a final 3 with, say, a Brad Culpepper and a Troyzan together, that would be the ultimate fear of a big Survivor fan like me and like you. And look what happens.
Yeah, I think that Troyzan, Brad, and Sierra Dawn Thomas, those were really the 3 that I was afraid would be at the end. Sierra ended up going home earlier than that, but we got Sarah Lacina, who I just never would have guessed would have made it to the final 3, much less won a season where, you had Sandra playing this game.
And Tony and all those big players. Now, speaking of Tony and Sarah played together in Survivor Cagayan. Do you think that it was really Tony who was the reason why Sarah was on this season because of their past relationship?
7th person voted out and the first member of our jury.
Sarah.
Bang, bang.
I don't know if their past relationship played a role in her casting, but I do think that their past relationship played a big role in how Sarah ended up playing the game. I mean, she said it from the very beginning that last time she was a cop, this time she was going to be a criminal, and that she learned that that was okay because the last time she played, she was out there with a cop who played like a criminal and won because of it. Might not be the most moral strategy, but we've now got 2 examples of it working for a cop out there. I don't know why they chose Sarah. I think that's still kind of a big question in my mind, but they did, and it worked out for her.
I think it was because Tony was on this season. I truly do, because a lot of the times now, and you can see with a lot of the other players, they were chosen because they had another player on the season that had a past relationship with them, like the 4 Ko-Rong. You have those people that have played together that may spark other things this season that the producers or maybe the viewers even want to see.
Yeah, I wish we'd gotten to see some of those interactions more with Sarah and Tony. It's too bad that Tony went out of the game so early. It never happened for those 2 in the game.
Yeah, and I would like to see Cirie and JT play more together, even though they didn't really have a big chance to play together in Heroes vs. Villains because Cirie got voted out so early. I would have loved to seen what them 2 would have done.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when Cirie was eliminated in Heroes vs. Villains, she got idled out, right?
Yeah, she got
Was
idled
that
out
by JT's idol?
No, that was by Tom Westman's idol.
Okay. It's difficult with these players who've played so many times to kind of keep track of how their games went, especially players some of them who may have even played together more than once.
Speaking again of Sarah and Ciara Dawn Thomas, who you mentioned before, do you think that the legacy advantage that Sarah took from Ciara after she was voted out and the advantage that she got from Michaela's bench at the challenge, do you think that was the real big moments as to why she won this game?
Yeah, more so the advantage that she got from Ciara, the legacy advantage. Because as I understand it, the votes in the urn that night that Cirie was eliminated, Sarah has since said, I believe, that the votes in that urn were for her, that she would have gone home. And if she didn't, take out Ciara after learning of the legacy advantage and getting that willed to her, Sarah Lacina would have gone home. And I think there's a very real chance that we could have finally been looking at a Cirie victory. So I don't know if that's why the jury gave Sarah the win, but I think that if you follow the timeline of the game, that is why Sarah won the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Cirie, so let's go to that historic tribal council where Cirie was voted out because no one else could be voted out.
So, any votes cast for Ty, Aubrey, Sarah, Troyzan will not count. You could not vote for Culpepper. He had immunity, which means, Cirie, it doesn't matter what votes are in the urn, because the only person who can receive votes
Me.
is you. And for what it's worth, not a single vote in here has your name on it. This is a historic tribal council. Most idols ever played at a tribal, 3. Most people ever safe at a tribal, 5. And the most significant and devastating part of tonight's history-making tribal for you, Cirie, is you become the first person in 34 seasons to be voted out simply because there literally is no other choice. There's no need to revote.
All right, there was the clip. So what were your initial thoughts of when you saw people playing idol after idol after idol?
I wasn't that surprised because this is something that I have feared and been theorizing would happen for a long time. Going into this episode, I was really worried that there was going to be a tribal council where all of those advantages got played, the idols and the legacy advantage, and that somebody would be eliminated by default. I really hoped it wouldn't be Cirie, but kind of having an inkling, just knowing when these things had to be played, it seemed very likely that it was going to happen. And as the episode progressed, it seemed more and more likely that it would end up being Cirie who would be on the receiving end of that default elimination. And so once one person stood up to play an idol, I knew that it was all over. Everybody was going to play their idols, and Cirie would be the last person sitting there.
It was so devastating to me. There was the 2 moments that were most devastating, I think, this season were when Malcolm was voted out, because that was just heartbreaking the way that turned out. And now Cirie, the first person to ever be voted out because there was no votes to cast for other people, but Cirie still had no votes with her name on it. So can you think of a way that Survivor could have handled this situation a bit better?
One of the things that I wondered in the moment was whether or not Jeff would say nobody gets eliminated at all.
That's what I was hoping. They'd maybe have a double elimination the next time.
In a way, you could almost look at it, if there's no votes that are cast, it kind of is like having a tie vote. And with this season, there's no revote. You go straight to a rock draw, but there's nobody else to draw rocks. I don't know how I would deal with that scenario. I don't know if this was something they wanted to have happen or if this happened sort of by accident. But I think that it's a good reason why you shouldn't have this many idols and advantages in a game. Because I do think it is against the spirit of the game for a person to be eliminated simply because they weren't one of the 5 people who found this thing hiding under a rock somewhere. I think for a long time, my concern about the hidden immunity idols is that they are to a certain extent against the spirit of the game as it was initially developed. But the strategy of it is so interesting. But I mean, how much strategy is there when it's the last night to play your idols and everybody plays them and one person goes home just because they didn't have one?
Yeah, I personally think that it ruined the integrity of the vote out at Tribal Council. And I agree with you. You know, when they initially started putting idols at camps back in Survivor China, when they first did it, and then they brought back Exile Island for the next 3 seasons, and then they got rid of it in Samoa, I was intrigued because at the time it was different. But now that they've done it for so many seasons, and now that they hide 2, 3 idols at once, it's really starting to get repetitive, and they're really starting to stack up.
Yeah, I think that that's one of my concerns about the way the game is progressing on a larger scale. And I think it's affecting the editing of the game too, because one of the things I noticed is that there were a lot of episodes this season where going into Tribal as an audience, you didn't have the information necessary to even guess who was going to get voted out. There were a lot of red herrings, and the person who ended up being eliminated was somebody who you had no idea was even on the chopping block this year. And I think that a certain aspect of that has to do with prevalence of idols in the game and this desire for that big, shocking blindside moment that stuns the audience. And when that happens, once or twice a season, the way it initially did with the idols, it's really exciting. But when it's happening every episode, either because an idol is being played or because, you just want to blindside the audience, it turns into bad storytelling. And I think that you can't blame the idols entirely for that because most of it didn't happen this season because the idols pretty much weren't played until the end of the game, save for that one vote with Malcolm. But I think it's the same sort of impetus to shock the audience and have big moves feel like they're happening that hurts not just the integrity of the game, but the narrative of the show.
I think that there's just too many advantages and idols in one season. When they switched over to 3 different tribes, you had idols at every camp, then you had the legacy advantage from the very beginning, then you had the quote-unquote Exile Island advantage that happened. There's just too much going on. It's too hard to keep track of almost. When you had the original Exile Island, and you had the one immunity idol, and that was it. And whoever had that had a good chance of going far in this game. You knew who it was who had the idol, and it was interesting to see when it would be played. But now with all these advantages and idols going around, especially when they're clustered into one tribal, it makes the game a little less fun.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to see a reduction in the number of idols that are in the game.
I don't mind them putting it at camps, but when you have 2 tribes and then switch them to 3 tribes and you have to put an idol at every single camp, and then in the instance with Ty where he figured out that, well, one's at one camp at this spot, it's probably going to be at the other camp at the same spot. Maybe they didn't think that someone would catch on to that, but you would have to think when they're quoting this season as game changers and having players at a high level of playing that they would figure that out.
I also wish the legacy advantage had similar rules to the idol, or I guess the other way around. One of the things I like about the legacy advantage is that you can play it only at certain times. It has to be played either at, 13 or 6. What I would like to see with the idols is, fine, you can hide one idol at every camp pre-merge, but I think that those idols should have a different expiration date. I don't think you should be able to save a pre-merge idol through to the merge and play it when you get to the final 5. I think that's how you get these multiple idols floating around. If you're going to hide an idol at every camp, I'd like to see it be where you have to play the idol at the merge if you make it that far, or that idol becomes valueless, and there's a new idol that gets hidden at the merge, but only one, so that, you don't have 4 or 5 idols hovering around the game for the whole time.
Ooh, I like that idea. How about we write down all of these suggestions that we're going to think of during this episode of the game show and send it to CBS?
We're going to go take over this show.
Yeah, we need to get our input on this show because as super fans, we know what we want to see and we know how to execute it. And of course, later on in the show, we'll talk about our initial thoughts of next season's Survivor Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers. But continuing our discussion about Cirie, it was really nice to see the jury give Cirie a standing ovation. And before Jeff sent her off and snuffed her torch, Cirie was given the opportunity to talk about her journey on Survivor over the course of more than a decade. Plus, when Jeff did snuff her torch, he allowed her to say his most famous catchphrase, and even on the way out, Jeff was admiring what Cirie has done for this game, and even called her a legend.
Cirie, you came out here 11 years ago to play this game. You've played it 4 times now. You famously got up off the couch to see what you were made of. You had another moment this season where you conquered a personal obstacle. If this is the end of your Survivor run, what is the story?
This has been one of the most grand experiences of my life. It changed me. I would have never done any of this stuff if I didn't get off that couch 11 years ago. I would have never met so many different people. I would have never had so many amazing experiences. So it's bittersweet. However, I'm going out in grand style. It never happened before. And it just makes this experience that much more special for me.
Cirie, how many days of Survivor have you played now?
Not enough.
Cirie, I have to say, you've played every day of Survivor with grace. And it has been an honor to have you be a part of the Survivor family. You are the 15th person voted out of this season. You become the 8th member of the jury. You need to grab your torch.
Sure.
Cirie, you want to say it?
The tribe has spoken. Oh, thank
Time for you to
Jeff.
go. Thank you, Cirie. Well, a Survivor legend goes out in legendary style.
Yeah, I liked seeing Cirie, get to give a little bit of an exit speech in front of everyone. I think that at the very least she deserved that. I really hate the way that she went out, and I hope that that is not the end of Cirie Field's Survivor experience, because as historic as it is, I think it would be really unfortunate for Cirie to end her Survivor journey being eliminated by default.
Yeah, especially with someone who's made such an important impact on this game, back in Micronesia when she made that epic move to get rid of Eric. And the person who, on the first episode she ever was featured in, she was afraid of leaves, and she was almost voted out first in Survivor Panama, and now look at her.
And now she's played more days than any other woman in the history of the game.
That's right. She's played 121 days, and Ozzy's the only one ahead of her with 128 days on the list of most played days in someone's Survivor career.
Who would have thought on Cirie's first day? I mean, if you could tell Cirie on her first day in Panama that one day she would play more days in this game than any other woman out there, I know she wouldn't have believed that, and I definitely don't think her tribe mates would have believed that either.
I don't think so. And just the way that she presents herself now, she's so confident. It's just amazing to see the transformation of one person through a game where you're in an island and it's so cutthroat, and you have all these advantages to think of, and you have all this gameplay strategy around.
Yeah, I think Cirie is a great example of just how real the game of Survivor is. I mean, we can talk all day about production and those kinds of things, and whether certain twists are fair and whether the game is really as even or balanced as it claims to be. But the experience is certainly real. It certainly has a huge impact on these people. And that's why people get addicted to it. Some people go out there over and over again. And for others, it changes their life in a really positive way. And I don't think that Cirie really ever does have to win the $1 million to be a winner of Survivor. I think Cirie has perhaps won a much bigger game than maybe anybody who's ever played the game, because her transformation is just so stark. Every time I hear Cirie speak, I'm proud of her, just having been able to watch her journey as I was growing up and seeing her now. It's really fantastic. Cirie is probably my favorite Survivor player ever, aside perhaps from Sandra, just because, you know, queen stays queen.
The queen stays queen.
Adios. Well, before you mentioned a statistic that was brought up by Jeff during the final tribal council, and it was Ozzy and Cirie becoming numbers 1 and 2 on Survivor's list of most days played by any castaway during their Survivor careers. Ozzy has played 128 days and Cirie has played 121 days, and they beat out Boston Rob and Parvati, who previously held the top spots with 117 and 114 days respectively. But that wasn't the only statistic that was mentioned during the final episode, because after winning the final immunity challenge, Brad Culpepper has now joined an elite group of players who have won 5 individual immunity challenges all in one season.
Culpepper wins his 5th individual immunity, guaranteed a spot at the final tribal council, where he will get a chance to plead his case for the $1 million and the title of sole survivor.
Brad.
Culpepper, come on over.
Hello, my old friend.
Once again, immunity is yours. Couple of significant things. With this win, you join a very small group of people who have won 5 individual immunity challenges in a single season. The bigger news, with this win, you are guaranteed a spot at the final tribal.
Pretty impressive for Brad. I know that he was somebody that neither you nor I was particularly excited about seeing in Game Changers, and I wasn't too excited to see him in the final 3 either. But I have to say, Brad Culpepper earned his spot in the game by playing so hard and so effectively, especially in those physical challenges. Brad Culpepper didn't enter the game a game changer, but I think he leaves a game changer, and he's somebody who I would be okay with seeing play again, even if I never want him to win, because I don't like Brad Culpepper.
Now, just a tease, we're going to play another game later on. I know you loved the game last time, so we're going to play another game this time.
Oh, boy.
It's not numbers themed this time around. It's a little different.
Good.
But this is not associated with the game, but can you name the other Survivor players that have won 5 immunity challenges in one season?
Oh, man.
There's 4 other people.
Is Ozzy one of them?
Ozzy is one, that's correct.
Okay.
He did it in Cook
Ozzy's
Islands.
That's an easy one, I think.
One of them we mentioned before.
Did Boston Rob win 5 immunity challenges in one season?
No, but he holds the record for most all time.
Okay.
The player that we mentioned before that idled out Cirie in Heroes vs. Villains.
Oh, Tom. Tom Westman has 5 immunity wins. And there's one more player or 2 more?
There's 2 more. Tom did it in Palau.
2?
There's 2 more. One did it in Cirie's original season.
Oh, is it Terry Dietz?
Terry Dietz from Panama is correct. And there's
Right.
one left.
Is the last one a woman?
No, it's not.
No, okay. Is it a notable name?
Yes. It's a recent name, too.
I don't know. You'll have to tell me.
It's Mike Holloway from Worlds Apart.
Ah, that's right. I forgot about his winning streak that season. That's how he got to the end.
That's right, and that's how he deserved the win.
Well, somebody had to win that season.
Well, that's true. Okay, so also there was another thing that happened at the reunion show, and Jeff Probst always does this, the what-if scenario. So the what-if scenario is when Jeff creates what could have been the final 3 had the final 4 tribal council vote been different, and then asks the jury who they would have voted for to win in that instance. So this season's what-if scenario involved Brad and whether or not he would have won the game if he voted out Sarah instead of Ty. So Jeff pulls a jury, which now includes Sarah, and it turns out there would have been a 5-5 tie vote between both Ty and Culpepper. So, because it was a tie, Jeff Probst, after years of fans wanting to know, finally revealed what would have happened if there was a tie vote after the final tribal council.
Okay, so this is something we've never talked about. Then it's a perfect time. Everybody asks, what would you do in the case of a tie at Final Tribal?
we would have had one. Had you said, you know what, I'm going to keep tie and get rid of Sarah, we would have had a tie. It would have been 5-5. This is the rule. This is what would happen in a future season.
What? Make 5.
The person who is not in the tie, so we have Brad with 5 and Ty with 5. Troyzan, you go to the jury and decide the final vote.
So that means that there would have been an 11th jury member. Now, I think 10 is ridiculous. That means there's 11 now. That's a little too much. But besides the point, do you like that the third person in the final 3 decides who wins if there's a tie?
I think it sort of makes sense. I would prefer a fire-making challenge.
I agree.
But my bigger question is, okay, so that's what happens if it's a 5-5 tie between, player 1 and player 2. But what about player 3? If it's not a 5-5 tie, if it's,
3-3-3.
Yeah, or what about if it's 4-4-2? What happens to those 2 other people who voted for player number 3? Did they get to re-vote?
In that situation, the one who would get the 2 votes would decide between the 4 and the 4. But I was talking about, say there was 9 jury members, and each finalist had 3 votes. What would happen in that situation?
I have no idea. I think at that point, you'd have to go to a fire-making challenge. I would find any other option unacceptable.
The only thing that still remains a mystery is if that jury member would be known at the final tribal council or they would wait until the live show to do it. Because Jeff Probst, when he was talking to Troyzan, he said, who would you have cast your vote as had you still been in the moment at that final tribal council?
Yeah, I got the sense that it was that Jeff would go tally the votes, and if it was a tie, that the losing player would immediately be informed that they had to cast a vote. I think the better question is, would everybody else in that moment also be told, or would it only be the losing player? Would they be pulled aside afterwards and told, hey, you lost, you have to cast a deciding vote? Or would it be done in front of everyone to say, it's a tie, what do we do?
That is interesting, because then they would have to, I would think, for us, the viewing audience, they'd have to reveal the votes at the final tribal council like it were a normal tribal council, and then say, okay, Troyzan, or in a future season, whoever it is, go cast another vote, and you can only vote for these 2, and then we'll reveal that vote at the live reunion show.
I think it might actually remove a lot of suspense from the game, though, because as exciting as a tie vote would be, I think there's also a very good chance that, when it comes down to one person making the decision, that it might be very clear who they would vote for. Let's say Troyzan made the decision. I think that Troyzan I can't imagine him voting for Sarah.
No.
It would seem obvious immediately, okay, Brad Culpepper has won.
Well, it would be tie in that situation.
Oh, that's right.
Well, even at the live show, Troyzan immediately said Brad Culpepper to be the winner.
Troyzan, in this case, honestly, back then, not watching the show, when you were in that moment, who would you have voted for?
I know Ty. Say
no.
it.
If it was Ty or Brad?
No, I know.
Yeah. No, Brad.
Brad Culpepper.
Yeah, Brad Culpepper.
Brad the whole time.
There was no hesitation.
It's easy. And that means the people leaving the island pretty much know, like, okay, usually they have to wait 6 months or longer, in the case of Game Changers, almost a year to find out who won. Whereas if it had been that scenario, I think Brad Culpepper would have been pretty satisfied for the last 12 months in the fact that he'd won the $1 million.
Yeah. So where does Sarah rank on your list of good winners versus bad winners? Is she in the middle? Is she near the good winners?
I would put her, at this point, not having rewatched the season and sort of done a study of Sarah's gameplay overall, I would put her more towards the bottom of my list, just because I don't think that Sarah really played a very impactful game on the first half pre-merge. I can't really remember what she was doing. Now, that may be a consequence of editing. There were other more interesting things going on. You wanted, as an audience, to be able to see those people like Sarah and Malcolm while they were in the game. So I understand why there was a bigger focus on those players.
Well, that's true, because
I just don't remember Sarah's game up until the merge.
Yeah, and speaking of your point of viewers wanting to see Malcolm and Tony and Sandra, because they were the players, if you remember the initial commercials before the season started, they were advertising those players big time.
Yeah, those are the people they were teasing us with.
Right, and unfortunately...
And they all destroyed each other.
Right, unfortunately they all got eliminated. So the next topic I want to talk about is the change of format during the final tribal council. So for the past 33 seasons, each jury member had one question that they could ask while they were on the jury. But this time, they made it more of an open forum discussion at the final tribal council.
So given that this is Survivor Game Changers and that there have been so many firsts, it seems only appropriate that we end with another first. We're going to change Tribal Council up this year in a way that will allow for a more open discussion between the jury and the final three. We're going to center it around the three aspects of the game: outwit, outplay, outlast. Outwit would be the social part of the game, the emotional intelligence, your alliances, relationships you had outside of those alliances. The outplay portion would be how you responded to the conditions put on you by the game. You have to build shelter. You have to compete in challenges. There are switches. There will be twists. How do you respond to the hand you're dealt? And the final phase, outlast. Most critical, did you put people on the jury who respect the way you outwitted and outplayed more than the other two? And if not, tonight is your last chance to sway them.
I loved it. What did you think of it?
I really enjoyed it as well. I think that they should have thought of this a while ago.
Yeah, I think it's kind of messy. Roundtable discussions like that often can be, but I think it's more fair, to be honest.
I do too. I think it makes it more like a regular tribal council. And this way, it doesn't really put a focus on one specific player as being the ultimate villain or the ultimate GOAT, or, okay, the only thing they did was win challenges, or the only thing they did was help out at camp, but they didn't really focus on the strategic aspect.
I also think it functions more the way a jury is supposed to. You know, juries are deliberative bodies. Everybody isn't an individual on a jury. You're supposed to sit there, gather evidence and testimony, and discuss amongst each other what you want to do. And I don't think that Survivor should have to have a unanimous winner in the way some juries in real life operate. But I do think that the jury should have that opportunity to talk amongst each other and to question the players, not just asking, one question and you're done.
And a lot of the times, they didn't really ask a question. They just told the players that they were terrible people.
I think that's the other thing. You can get out your frustrations and you can still have more to say and talk about.
Right, yeah. So the criteria for this open forum was an outwit section, an outplay section, and an outlast section. And I'm glad that they used that as the base of this, because a lot of the times, or especially in the past few seasons, those three elements, which are the key elements to this game, were not even talked about at the final Tribal Council.
Yeah, I thought it was still a little messy in regards to that. I didn't totally get a sense that those themes were coming out as much as they were teased to be.
I agree.
But I think it's a good format. It's a good start. I'm excited to see how this version of Final Tribal evolves if they choose to stick with it going into heroes versus healers versus hustlers.
And we'll get to that shortly, but I think that they should. I think they should keep this. I think they should keep the no revote at Tribal Council thing, because if you notice, there was hardly any talking of splitting the votes this season because of that rule.
I don't know how I feel about the no revote rule because it still hasn't happened.
Did you notice at the Tribal Council where Cirie was voted out, Jeff said there's no need to revote? I think he actually forgot that there is no more revote.
There's no need to revote.
Yeah. I wonder what would have happened if you had a scenario like Second Chance where there were still other people to vote for, there were just no votes cast.
True.
Is that a tie or is that its own sort of exception?
Well, in a way, the revote and the second revote didn't really matter because they were still deadlocked and they went to the discussion anyway.
Yeah. I
think the just going to the discussion is the way that it'll pan out.
I'm still really interested to see if we ever get a scenario where there's actually a tie. And I'm also interested to see if we ever get a scenario where somebody schemes the rule to force a tie because it's the only way to save somebody.
That would be interesting. So now, which past players do you think might have won the game because of this final tribal switch-up with the open forum tribal council? Because there's been, as I mentioned before, a lot of players that just got bashed for what they did during the game, and that's why they didn't win. Do you think there's any players that would have won because of this new open forum?
I think that there is a chance that Russell Hantz could have fared better in Samoa.
I do too. I have some that I think might have won. I think Spencer in Second Chance would have had a better chance with the jury because he didn't really get as much time to speak about what he did in the game as Jeremy or Tasha did. I think Coach may have fared a bit better in South Pacific since he was close to winning that season over Sophie.
I can't imagine a jury ever actually giving Coach the $1 million. But that
Really?
must just be me.
Wow. See, I thought Coach won that season. Sophie's another one of those winners that I think is near the bottom of my list.
Yeah, I agree with you on that front. In terms of Sophie being near the bottom of the list, this just might be a personal bias, but I can't imagine, pretty much regardless of how the game was played, casting a vote for Coach myself, just because I find Coach's lies so egregious and they make me uncomfortable that I would never want to reward Coach's delusions by winning Survivor. And I feel the same way about Debbie. I would never want to see Debbie win because I think she's so crazy that I think it'd be bad for her. I think it'd be bad for Coach.
I don't think Debbie will ever win this game. However, she's very entertaining to watch.
Yeah, she's something else.
You know what's funny about Debbie, though? That she always thinks that she's in control and behind these mastermind plans. And there's some plans that she did have a huge say in, but it's so funny to watch that she always thinks that she's the top dog in every situation.
Yeah, it's because Debbie is utterly delusional.
Let's see, who else do I think? I think that Boston Rob, when he lost by 1 vote in All-Stars, I think more of an open forum may have served him a bit better because against Amber, Amber, of course, was Rob's right-hand woman for more reasons than one. But I think Rob could have had maybe a better chance to explain some of the things that he did on that season.
I agree with you. All-Stars is a weird scenario because Rob and Amber were so linked to each other and ended up together in the end that even though Amber won that season, I sort of always think of it as it having been both of them. They're the only couple to ever win the game together. And it was also such a close vote in the end. But you're right. I think that on a technical level, this version of Tribal Council could have resulted in an outcome where Rob was the one who technically took home the win that night.
I agree. And let's just hope that this open forum continues on because I'd like to see this happen in seasons to come.
Me too.
And speaking of seasons to come, are you ready to talk about season 35?
Oh boy, I'm very ready. Let's talk.
So, of course, at the end of every season, Jeff Probst teases what the following season is, and this time around, they're going back to Fiji with Survivor Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers.
For our 35th season, Survivor returns to one of the most beautiful places on Earth, Fiji. And for the first time ever, we'll divide the tribes based on the positive traits most often associated with them by others. Heroes. They are heralded for their courage, their achievements, and ideals for which they stand. Healers. They receive gratitude for their acts of service in helping people heal their emotional and physical pain. Hustlers. They are respected for their work ethic. Get it done no matter what. They stop at nothing to achieve their goals. 3 very different approaches to life will once again be tested in the greatest social experiment on television. It's Survivor, Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers. CBS this fall.
What a baffling theme name. You know, I heard this name about a week before the preview actually aired, and even though it was from some places that are usually pretty reliable, I stayed skeptical because it sounds so goofy.
It's such a weird name. First of all, I think that putting the name Heroes in this season degrades the best season of all time, Heroes versus Villains.
Yeah, I can see that to a certain extent.
Because when you put heroes in the sense of heroes versus villains, you're talking about past players who have done heroic things, who embody the good of what Survivor is. And even though the heroes in this context are devoted to people like Marines and firefighters who are heroes in their own right and heroes that should always be acknowledged, I think putting it again in a Survivor title degrades what the term heroes in Survivor means.
I just think they should have called it Worlds Apart, or they should have named it after the location. I know they've used Fiji. I know they've used, where are we now, the Mamanuca Islands. I'm sure that, like Survivor South Pacific, they could come up with some sort of name for this location that they haven't used yet. And it could have been Survivor, you know, wherever in the ocean, Worlds Apart, the same way that San Juan del Sur had the Blood versus Water subtitle on the location subtitle.
Yeah, I agree. Now, do you think that fans will lose interest in this season because they're in Fiji for now the 3rd season in a row and the 4th overall?
No, not necessarily. I think that the draw to Survivor for a long time has stopped being the new locations. If you're someone who watches Survivor still in season 34 and season 35, I don't think that it is the new location that is bringing you back. And so while it may frustrate longtime fans like you and I to see them staying in Fiji for a third season in a row, I don't think it's going to really turn people away. Samoa was the only location that they revisited that really started to turn me off to the game. I hated Samoa as a location. In Fiji, I really like it. I wish they would go somewhere else, and I hope that the game doesn't stay in Fiji forever now. But I'm not too torn up about them staying in Fiji again.
Well, if they stay in Fiji too long, I think that they're going to have to run out of themes for one location because they're going to have to name the seasons different. Like this time is Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers as the title compared to, say, Cagayan, where Brawn, Brain, Beauty was just a subtitle.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what the season after the next one will be, the winter to spring season of 2018.
I agree, because apparently that's staying in Fiji as well.
Yeah, because they usually shoot back to back. There's been a lot of speculation that because it will be season 36 that they will do fans versus favorites again.
I hope
but
so.
If they do that, they need a location subtitle still.
True. I don't think that they're going to end up calling it, if they do fans versus favorites, just fans versus favorites, because the other two, Micronesia and Karamoan, that was the subtitle.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of themes, have you noticed that in the last 10 seasons, you've had fans versus favorites, Bronze, Brain, Beauty twice, Blood versus Water twice, Worlds Apart, Millennials versus Gen X, and now Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers after Game Changers. So from seasons 26 to now 35, the last 10 seasons, all these seasons had a theme to it.
Yeah, we have had a lot of repeating themes lately, or just themes in general, although I think that's something that does sort of make sense to me because this is a game that is in its 35th iteration. And I think that if they didn't change it up so frequently and try different approaches to it, that it would get boring. I don't think that just going to a new location cuts it anymore.
I agree. I just think that the themes now are getting a little too ridiculous. Like, I really enjoyed Bronze, Brain, Beauty. I think that was a very good theme because it embodied what Survivor is. There's players that achieve greatness because of their strength. There's players that go far because of their strategic elements and how they work using the brain. And then there's the players who go far because of their looks. And I really enjoyed Blood versus Water because it pitted, in the first time around, past players versus their loved ones to see if the game overtakes their significant other. And then, of course, they redid it again with all new players, which was okay. The season didn't turn out as well as season 27. And then you had Worlds Apart, which I think when Worlds Apart hit, I think that's when the themes really started to degrade for me. When you're going by collars now, blue collar, white collar, and no collar, that started to get a little sketchy to me.
Yeah, I actually thought Worlds Apart was an interesting theme. I don't think that season worked out that well overall. I think it's one of the more forgettable seasons in the recent history of the show. But the idea behind it is something that I find interesting. Pitting people from different walks of life against each other in this sort of Lord of the Flies style environment that we have on Survivor, that's interesting. And it's why, as goofy as the name Heroes, Healers, and Hustlers is, I'm interested to see how the game turns out. And I thought Millennials versus Generation X was a pretty goofy theme idea too. And it's kind of a goofy name. But I think that ended up being one of my favorite seasons in a long time on the show. So we may have a funny name for next season, but I think that there's still a chance that it could end up being a really good season if the cast is good and if those imposed labels do anything to change the way they play the game.
I just think those labels, they start out like, in the opening interviews where they say, well, like in the terms of Millennials versus Gen X, well, the Millennials, they get trophies for just participating in that stuff. And then that kind of just went out the window once the game actually started. There was really not that much influence because of a generation. I think they just put these labels on these players, like in Worlds Apart, I'm a blue collar, we're in the mud every day and getting our hands dirty, and the white collar, we're used to running the show and that stuff, and the no collar, we have a free spirit. The no collar, I feel that was a bit of a stretch because the label that they have on them, that they're just free wills. And I think that they just put a label on them because they had to put a label on them to make 3 tribes. But I feel that the labels itself don't really influence the game.
See, I'm in the middle of a Millennials versus Generation X rewatch right now, or it's more of a review of the game because I'm kind of binging it all at once. And I think that those imposed labels have made a huge impact on that season. Because, the players, I'm at the merge now, and the players are still talking about we're millennials, like we're going to take out this older generation. And the older generation really seems to look down on the millennials. And yeah, there is some elements of them trying to cross that generational divide of their old tribes, but it still seems to play a big role in the culture of the game. And I think that that's why Millennials versus Generation X was an interesting theme for me, because I think that if you had that same cast, but you didn't divide them by age, that you would end up with a very different season, even though they were only separated like that for a little while. Just the way they viewed themselves and the way they talked about themselves, I think it had an impact on how they played.
And you mentioned that they were only separated for such a short amount of time. Okay, so every season, especially with these theme seasons, I love to make predictions as to when the tribe swap will happen, because now they always love to switch up the tribes and the theme goes out the window. That's why I'm not a big fan of these themes, because the themes itself last for so short of a time and it just becomes the regular game. So my prediction is that on the 5th episode, when there's 14 left, the theme's going to be washed out, and there's going to go back to 2 tribes of 7.
The 5th episode. I think that it's going to happen at the 4th episode, and that
have 3 tribes of 5.
It'll either be 3 tribes of 5,
or the exile, or the exile.
Or it'll be 2 tribes and 1 person gets exiled.
I hope it's not that. I really was not a fan of the exile twist from Game Changers. I thought that was a complete waste, and I thought that was just a way to introduce another advantage that didn't need to be in the game, and to bring back a player in Cochran that should have been playing this season to begin with.
Yeah, if they do an exile, I hope it wasn't like the one they did in Game Changers. I never want to see that Exile Island boat again.
And it was an Exile Island. They should have actually made an Exile Island and put some sort of advantage there to hide, and that you had to find, instead of just giving them.
I agree. And I'd be fine even with the, the whole mentor thing happening again. I mean, it's kind of hokey, and I do think it's sort of a waste of time, but it'd be more interesting if, you're out on Exile Island and you're all alone, and you don't know what to do, and all of a sudden, like, Rupert bursts through the bushes and teaches you how to fish. I'd find that much more compelling than sitting on a boat sipping cocktails with Cochran.
But they don't even show fishing anymore, because they're giving them every single item of food they could ever want.
Well, they did that in Game Changers, but I don't know if that'll happen again.
I hope not, because the way that they got treated last season was a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, they were pampered a little bit for Survivor contestants. But I think that might have been part of the deal in terms of getting some of those people back out there.
Maybe, but if you look at All-Stars, the season Survivor All-Stars, they didn't give them that much. Heroes versus Villains, they had the usual rewards that they gave at that time, but it wasn't as pampered as this was.
Right.
Now, here's why I say that on the 5th episode, when there's 14 left, that they're going to switch it up. Because I re-looked at the structure of Brains, Brawn, and Beauty, the seasons from Cagayan and Korong, and that was the layout for those seasons, where there was 3 tribes, and that's how they switched it up. And I feel that on the 7th episode, when there's 12 left, the tribes will merge, there'll be a jury of 9, and the final 3 will occur. That's what I'm predicting.
That'll be interesting. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, so I just hope, in my perfect Survivor world, the theme would last until about day 25 when Heroes versus Villains finally merged, because at least you show the theme at its peak.
Yeah, I like that idea. I don't know that it's going to happen that way.
I don't think that they can go that long now without switching the tribes up, because I feel like now the production team is always trying to think of a way to switch things up and put advantages here and advantages there, and to try to get good television moments that they're not even concerned with the actual theme they put up there. And especially, they should really focus on keeping the theme intact, because the whole season is named this. It wasn't like when Brawn, Brain, Beauty, that was the subtitle, and that's how they started the season. But the season is named Heroes, Healers, and Hustlers. So I think there's a whole nother level of whether it should be the theme throughout the merge or not.
I agree with you. I just don't know that the producers agree with us, and that's the problem.
That's why we need to take over this game. The super fans need to take over Survivor. We know what to do with it.
That can be a new theme. It can be Survivor super fans versus favorites. Because if I have any objection to the fans versus favorites seasons, it's that some of those people seem like they've never seen this show before.
Oh, yeah. Well, Bernie, it's that time. We have come to the game of the day.
Game of the day.
Awesome. Tell me about this game, Bradley.
Well, today's game, it's not numbers themed, as you tried to hint at not making another numbers themed game last time around. So I took into your best interest and not made another numbers themed game. This one is called Castaway Clues. Castaway Clues.
Oh, okay. I like this. I think. We'll see.
And here's how we play Castaway Clues. In front of me are 7 numbered cards, each of which contain the name of a notable survivor castaway, as well as 3 castaway clues that will help you identify their name. Now, after picking a number, you'll hear the first clue, and if you can guess the castaway's name at that point, you'll score 3 points. If not, you'll hear the second clue, and a correct guess then would earn you 2 points. And if you choose to hear the final clue and then correctly guess the castaway, you'll score 1 point. However, keep in mind that for every new card chosen, you only get 1 guess at the castaway's name. So choose wisely when you want to guess, because if you give an incorrect answer, you'll score no points, and we have to move on to the next card.
So once I say a name, it's over.
That's right. Correct or incorrect. There's 7 cards, and you'll have a chance to play up to 5 of them. And if you can score 10 points or more using those 5 names, you will be deemed a winner and claim redemption.
Okay.
Almost view this as Redemption Island.
Okay.
I know you love Redemption
Island.
Island.
My least favorite twist in the history of the game, but I will try to view this as my chance at redemption anyway.
All right, are you ready to play Castaway Clues?
I'm ready, Bradley. Let's do this.
Let's play Castaway Clues. All right, we have 1 through 7. Which one would you like first?
Let's go with 1.
Let's go with number 1. All right. For 3 points, this castaway is the 5th returning player to be named sole survivor. Do you want to guess or do you want to move on?
Ooh, move on.
Okay, this is for 2 points now. With this castaway's win, they became the 2nd person in Survivor history to play a perfect game.
Ooh.
You can guess now for 2 points, or we can move on to 1 point. Keep in mind, you need 10 points or more after 5 names.
Can you repeat the second clue?
Sure. With this castaway's win, they became the 2nd person in Survivor history to play a perfect game.
Is the answer Cochran?
It is Cochran. Congratulations, that's right.
Phew. Okay.
And that scored you 2 points on the first name.
Alrighty.
You have 2.
This is going to be tough.
Well, I never said that my games were easy, as you saw last time. So you have 4 more names to go, and you have 2 points. So you're on pace. If you score 2 every time, you win.
Okay.
Which one would you like? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7?
Let's go with 2.
Number 2, going down the order. And we have the name, and this is for 3 points.
Okay.
This castaway is only the 2nd 2-time player to be the last and first jury member.
2nd 2-time player to be the
last and first jury member. Do you want to guess or do you want to go on?
I want another clue.
Okay, this is for 2 points now. This castaway is the only returning player from Survivor Cagayan who has never been a finalist.
Ooh. Cagayan returning players who never have been a finalist. Oh.
Do you want to guess or do you want to go on?
I'm going to need one more clue on this.
Okay, this is for 1 point. In Survivor Cagayan, this castaway flipped on their alliance to vote out Game Changers winner, Sarah Lacina. Might as well take a guess. This is the last clue.
Was it Trish?
Oh, no. It's your favorite, Chaos Cass.
Cass wasn't a finalist. I could have sworn...
When was she a finalist?
I could have sworn Cass was in the final 3 in Cagayan.
Yeah, but there was a final 2 that season.
Oh.
With Tony and Wu.
I forgot about the final 2.
Yeah.
You're right.
They brought back the final 2 that season.
Oh, curses, that final 2. Cursing both me and Cass.
So now you have 2 points, and you have 3 more names to go. So you need to catch up. What number would you like next?
Let's just do 3.
All right, here we go. Ready for your first clue?
Yeah.
For 3 points. This Castaway's luxury item during their first season was a bongo.
Ooh, I'm going to need a second clue.
For 2 points. This Castaway is the first female ever voted off twice.
First female voted off twice. I think I need the last clue.
Okay, this is for 1 point. This Castaway famously walked off the stage during a Survivor All-Stars reunion show commercial.
Oh, it's Jerry.
Jerry Manthe is correct, and that gets you another 1 point, so you're up to 3. And you only have 2 names left, and the most you can get is 6 points with those 2 names. So I am sorry, but Bernie, you have lost again.
I've lost already. Oh my.
You have lost the game already.
Oh boy. I'm going to need to get on Survivor and win to get real redemption.
That's right, yeah, you need a real redemption island for you. But
hopefully not a real redemption island, because I'll be angry if there's redemption island on any season of Survivor I participate in. I'll pull a Jerry. I'll walk off.
Do you want to play another card just to see if you can get some more points?
Yeah, let's do it. I just want to know.
Okay, so do you want to go with 4 since that's the way you're going?
Yeah, up the chain.
All right, here we go. Number 4. For 3 points, this Castaway was the second female player to appear on back-to-back seasons.
Ooh, second female player to appear on back-to-back seasons. Is it Amanda?
It is Amanda. Great job.
The first person would the first person be Stephanie?
That is right, yeah. Look what I'll do. I'll give you 4 points for knowing that. So
yes!
you're up to 7. And if you can get the 3 points on the next one, I'll consider you a winner.
Okay.
You want to go with 5?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Here we go. Now, this is for a win, a second chance win. This is a true second chance story.
This is Redemption Island right now.
For 3 points, this Castaway is the only person to play in a season that began with 2 tribes, 3 tribes, and 4 tribes.
Ooh.
Take a guess now, because this is worth a win.
Is the answer Ozzy?
Oh, no, it is not Ozzy.
Ooh.
I'll give you the next clue. This was worth 2 points. Currently, this Castaway has accumulated the most votes against them in their Survivor career for any male player.
Oh, shoot. I feel like I just saw this fact the other day. Who has the most votes against them as a male? I think Andrea has the most votes as a woman. Who is the man with the most votes against him? I don't know, Bradley. I'll take the last clue, though, just to see if I can get it.
Okay. For 1 point, this Castaway was the second person to mutiny in Survivor Cook Islands.
Oh, who was the second mutiny that season? Oh, is it Penner?
That is right, Jonathan Penner.
Dang. I forgot how many votes Penner had against him.
So
you had a rough Survivor experience, much like me playing this game.
By the way, Andrea is the woman with the most votes cast against her in her Survivor career, and Candace was the first person to mutiny on Survivor Cook Islands. But Jonathan Penner is one of my personal favorite players. I'd love to see him again.
I think a lot of people would love to see Penner again. Just like I'm sure people will love to see me again when I eventually win this game.
All right, so when Survivor Heroes, Healers, and Hustlers, sometimes that's hard to say. We should just name it Survivor Triple H. When Survivor Triple H appears, we'll do another episode of the game show, and I'll get another game for you. Now, Now, last time I took your advice to not do a numbers game. Is there a topic in Survivor that you would like to be quizzed on?
No, just cook up whatever kind of mad science experiment of a Survivor game you can, and I'll try my luck at it.
All right, I'll get working on that new Survivor game. But did you at least have fun with this one?
Yeah, I did. I hope that someday I get redemption, but I'm getting closer.
You were actually very close, 8 points.
You know, it took Boston Rob a few tries to win the game, too, so...
It's very true. And that was the game of the day, Castaway Clues. Castaway Clues! Well, Bernie, thank you so much for joining me once again on the game show to talk about Survivor Game Changers and specifically the finale of this season.
All right, it was my pleasure calling in and talking about the show. Always love to. Hope to chat again when Survivor Triple H starts next fall.
We certainly will, and I'll have another game planned just for you.
All right. Thanks, Bradley.
And that's going to do it for this episode of The Game Show. It's been a blast talking about Survivor Game Changers over the last 3 episodes, and I can't wait for some more great Survivor talks to come. Be sure to tune in next time to the talk show about television game and competition shows, The Game Show. I'm Bradley Clarke, the Bradster, saying bye for now. All of the Survivor clips and sounds used during this episode of The Game Show are courtesy of the CBS Television Network.
This edition of The Game Show was created and produced by Bradley Clarke and was recorded at the WRHU studios. This is Austin Angelo speaking.